oftentimes you will have additional things to lock up, such as freezers, cabinetry, cupboards, other things that do not have conventional locks. All right, where's my people at? Who's got a mic on? I also want to let you guys know that this will probably be the last Zoom format that we have. There's actually another better product called StreamYard, and the StreamYard is actually going to that's going to help things out quite a bit. It's going to make it a lot easier, and we won't have to mute everybody's microphone like we have to do now. So the first thing we're going to do is log into wayneslockshop.com. We're going to hit the forum section. Let's see here, right here, we got general locksmithing. And we're going to service and rekey the ABUS 8350 series. So we're just going to start off right here. So this is the lock. This is about the size of the lock. You can also get different shackles. It's going to come with a standard 1-inch shackle. We can go to 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, and then 6-inch for longer applications. I would caution you that the longer the shackle, the more exposed and the more vulnerable it is to attacks. Okay, so just know that. Shorter shackle is going to be better. If you have an application where you have to have a long 6-inch shackle, that's fine. But we're actually going to do some testing. Like you could shove a bar or something in there and literally twist and probably break or compromise that shackle or padlock if we don't pay attention to it. So you don't want to do it if you don't have to. Try and keep that shackle as short as possible, short, just long enough to do the job. Okay. The next thing we're going to have here is this is the actual lock itself, ABUS 8350 series. This is what it's going to look like. Obviously, ours is Schlage keyway. So the code for that is actually 300, I believe. I had one of those boxes. I had a box here, but I believe it's SC300 is the Schlage keyway code. Now, Schlage is going to be one of the most popular keyways around. So pretty obvious that it would be a good idea to have some of these on the truck. And this is one of the things that we stock. You would be surprised how many times you service a customer and they have a a tire yard or a Connex container or some other application where a padlock is just going to be the only real way we can secure that location for them and meet their needs. Now, the other thing that you're going to see is this little Z bar back here. Okay, so this little Z bar is going to be really important, and we're going to talk about that little fella. It can be confusing what that little Z bar actually does. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to do, as you can see, we've got a brand new lock right in the box. It's going to come with a key. Your standard key is going to come cut to all O cuts or 0 cuts, not 1 cuts, 0 cuts or O cuts. I did try it, and a key blank will actually open this up. If it doesn't, just run the machine on there and just touch those O cuts into it, and you should be able to open it right up. You will have to have the key, or you will have to pick the lock in order to get it open so that we can access this Phillips head screw that will release the cylinder so that we can rekey and service the lock. Now, if it's a brand new lock like these, shouldn't have any problems out of the gate. It's going to be nice. It's going to be clean. It's going to be ready to go, brand new. However, in the field, that may change. Okay, so we need to, if it's dirty inside, I'll usually make it a habit to kind of clean those things out, soak them down in some brake clean or some carburetor clean or some kind of solvent, get all the dirt and grit and crap out of it, flush them out real good. And then the most important part of the cleaning step is rehydrating that lock. So making sure that we put some kind of protective lubricant in there to make sure that the lock is going to function. We have a lot of moving parts inside this lock. Okay, so we're going to pop it open. If you have a random padlock and you do not have a key to it, you will have to pick it. Nice thing about this is in Schlage format, you can use a leashy tool. Works really nice. This is what it looks like from up above. You can see I've got my pinning kit, pitting mat, and screwdriver, and this is what it looks like compared to the size of your hand, just so you can get an idea of it. This is going to start to release the cylinder. You can see the cylinder starting to come out, just like so. Very easy. And here we have it. Now the cylinder is out in my hand, and you can see there's that little Z bar hiding down in there. Again, that is going to be for key retaining and non-key retaining functions. So we will talk about that and go into that in depth further. One of the first things that's tricky about this lock is the little pin. In order to rekey this lock, we're going to have to get the pins so they're accessible. Can't access them through the top because it's a sealed unit, so we're going to have to access them through the side. There's a hole and there's a window on, a solid window on the bottom, and I think there's actually holes in the side as well. So the first thing you'll have to do to be able to rekey this lock is push this little detent pin down. You can do that with your hand, you can do it with your finger, or you can do it with this little screwdriver or a pick. Anything you have will push that down. And then as you're pushing it down, you need to rotate it past this little check pin. Next, we're going to be rekeying this to a customer's key. So we're going to need to decode their key and see what they have. I believe there might have been one before this. It should have been a one cut. But this one, I'm just showing that you decode it. This one's decoded to a number 7. This one's decoded to number 1. Yeah, that's the first cut there. Okay, just showing some basic how to use the decoder. And then now, once you get this to turn all the way around, you notice that check pin is now tucked up into here, and he's happy and gone. You can start to see some of the windows. These are individual slots or individual drill holes. You could rekey it through here, but I find that to be a little bit frustrating as well. I like to do it through the big window on the side. These pictures did not upload in the order that I put them in, so I will have to apologize for that, but you still get the main idea. So far for decoding, we've got 11733, I believe. Yep. And this is what it's going to look like when you have the chambers all pinned up. Now, I want to talk about that for a second. This one looks like it has the 6 chamber drilled out, and it does. Now, you could put a pin in here. The problem is it'll actually be detrimental to your rekeying because there is not a spring nor a top pin in the top housing. At least there wasn't in my cylinder. And when I put a number 300 pin in there or a number 9 pin, it fell out the top. There's actually a hole. There's nothing there. Okay, so something to just kind of keep in mind. And the reason that I was doing this is I was going to try and capture this on film, that you can do a 5-pin to 6-pin conversion. Meaning, if you have a customer who has all commercial grade 6-pin locks, and you needed to add it to this would accept it just fine. You just leave the 6-pin out. Okay, you can't add it to this system. If you're converting a 5-pin to a 6-pin lock and you don't want to drop that top chamber, one little trick you can do is put a 9 depth or a 300 thousandths pin in that 6 chamber, and it'll actually ride on the key just perfect to where you have 6 pins lined up and fully chambered in a 6-pin lock, but are only using a 5-pin key. That is what I was trying to demonstrate here, but with that 6-pin not having the top pin or the top spring, it did not work. So just trying to throw all of the information out that I possibly can at you. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins chambered up, not on the 6th one. Now you'll notice the Z bar in here. Okay, so the Z bar is for key retaining and non-key retaining. Key retaining means that you have to have the key in the lock and it remains in the lock while the lock is unlocked. You cannot pull the key out and leave the padlock unlocked. This is a security feature, okay? It allows it so that people quit dummy locking things. So when you have obnoxious employees who try and just dummy lock or just set the lock unlocked and try and pull the key out, it doesn't physically allow them to do that. This is a good thing from a security standpoint. It is favorable to have the Z-bar in place and have it key retaining, in my personal opinion. However, you might have a customer that finds this frustrating, and Farmer Joe on his farm or his gate likes to leave his stuff dummy locked, and he doesn't want this. He specifically wants to be able to pull his key out. That would be non-key retaining, meaning it does not retain the key, and you can unlock it, pull the key out, leave it unlocked, and lock it at will when you choose. You simply remove the Z bar in order to make that happen. Okay, so with Z bar in place, you'll notice what it does is it interacts with the cam on the back of the lock, and it says, okay, you can only go this far, and until the lock is relocked, the key will not pull out. It's only a few degrees of separation. So lining the key back up with the Bible of the lock and with the top pins is only a few degrees of separation, and I'll show what that looks like. So here you can see the back of the lock and how this engages in the back of the housing of the lock. We can also see what it looks like through that big window, and then you have the smaller individual windows here. Again, I like rekeying through the big window like so. Okay. All right. I thought I had a video to go with this as well. I guess we'll have to go over here and our video management session here. Right there. So we'll see all these steps put together. Alrighty, today we're going to be rekeying the ABUS 8350 series padlock. This is going to be the 300 series, which means that it is a Schlage or SC keyway. Now let's understand what we're doing here through this clear plastic guide. These padlocks are not identical, but the same concept is happening here. So what I want to show is the key is going to get inserted to the cylinder, and then you're going to watch the pins, see how they're not lined up currently. It's going to get inserted just like so. And now everything is lined up to the shear line, and you can see that we can now start to move this. When the cylinder moves, it actuates the locking pawl in the back of the lock, and it starts to retract these two catches. Now, our ABUS is a much more quality padlock, and this is a trainer padlock, so it has ball bearings here to prevent pry attacks or shim attacks to that padlock in this location. That ball bearing won't allow the shims to come down in here. But this is the basics of what we're doing. Okay, I'm going to do that one more time from the beginning, just like so. So we're going to go ahead and click, and now you can see that that's open. This is the concept of what's happening inside this lock. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. The first thing that we're going to notice is that it is keyed to 0 bitting. This has 6 slots on the key. I've got a 5-pin key here, and I've got a 6-pin key that it came with. So I'm actually going to be rekeying a 6-pin key to a 5-pin key blank. Okay, but this lock is only going to take 5 pins anyways. So if we look at the key from the factory, or if you don't have a key, maybe it fell out of the box, or maybe you bought one that doesn't have a key. If it is factory bitted, the factory bidding is going to be all O's or 165 thousandths, meaning each one of these little marks that you see, that one, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 here are all cut to O cuts. It doesn't look like it's cut very much compared to this key, but trust me, it definitely matters. If that wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to turn the key over very easily. So if you didn't have a key, you could take a key blank, an SC4 6-pin Schlage keyway key, and cut it to all zeros, and you should be able to get it to open just like so. Okay. Lock is actually a little bit sloppier than I had predicted, and a standard key blank will, in fact, actually open the ones that I have. I'm actually going to try that theory out. I've got a complete blank. Yeah, just a blank will work too. This one doesn't have any cuts on it, so just a pure blank will work. That one does have the cuts on it, but this one apparently doesn't need it. Now that it's open, it reveals this screw right here. This screw is going to be very important. It's holding the cylinder right here into the bottom.
Yeah, just a
I also want to explain the difference between key retaining and non-key retaining. So here comes our screw, here comes our cylinder. First thing we're going to need to do is grab our key, and you'll notice that you can only turn it so far because of this guy right here. Okay, that you can either get a tool or you can use your fingernail and just push him down and push him right out of the way. Okay, then it's going to fold over to where you can actually see the pins. These are all 1/65 thousandths pins. Make sure you get them all. I save them. You don't have to, but if they're all the same size and they're all factory pins, why not use them? Okay, they work really good in master key systems. Now that the old key is out, the factory key is out, we can put the new key in. I already used a key gauge, Schlage key gauge to decode it. We have 11733. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a
Wayne, can you pause it right there?
Or no,
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that you can't key them to a 6-pin system, and you actually can. Inside every one of those locks is a little plastic bag with what looks to be a small square brass piece. And that square piece of brass is what holds your spring and top pin in place in that 6th chamber. It slides into that groove that you see at the top of the Bible.
Oh my goodness. My error on that. I did not see this little bag, and actually a little bag fell out. I found it right here.
There is one in every one of their padlocks in every series that they make. You can definitely key those into a true 6-pin system.
Wow, that is excellent information. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I didn't even see this little guy. He fell out onto the ground, and I did not even know that was in the box until you just mentioned it.
Okay, I don't mean to trump you on your own video here.
No. That's great. I would rather have the correct information out there. I tried to pin it up to 6-pin, and the pin fell out. I was like, well, why did they do that? That doesn't make any sense.
That's exactly what that little shim is for. And it just slides in from either side. If you're left-handed or right-handed, you don't have to stake it in or anything, because once you slide the cylinder back into the chassis, it cannot possibly fall out.
No, that's great. That is great. I was wondering why they did that. Why did they drill it out for 6 if they didn't offer the ability to put a extra pin in there? So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry. 180. So we're going to do 180. And you can use pinning tweezers if you like. It might actually help on this one. For the small little pins, I can still get it with my fingers. Some people really like pinning tweezers. I'll give an example. Now this pin needs to be put in tip down. Okay, there's 2 sides. Tip, flat. Always tip down. That rides into the grooves of the key or the cuts of the key and allows it to operate. There's a little bit longer one. We got a 270 or a number 7 cut. Tip down. And as we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and hold this up and let it pass the eye test. I need to see that there's not a giant gap or void to where the driver pin will drive too far in, and it can't be too high either. So this is just perfect. It's allowing it to lock into place, but don't push it too far or your driver pins that are stuck in the Bible up here will drive down into here. I'm just seeing if it'll make that clearance, and it is.
You suppose they did that, Mark Dawson, because too many people tried to convert it to 5-pin and kept locking up and bricking up the chamber? So they made you add it to it later as opposed to coming factory with it. It seems strange to me that they would do that.
Actually, they would come 5-pin and you would add the 6 if you wanted it. And if they were already pinned to 6, people would leave the top pins in and jam the lock.
That is exactly what I was trying to say. Yeah. Okay. That makes a little more sense now.
So then I'm going to come back. We need 2 number 3 pins or 2 10
thousandths. 2 pins at 210 thousandths. I hope that makes sense. Now, here's where things can get a little tricky. Under normal circumstances, a 6-pin key and a 6-pin lock would require the 6-pin to be put in here. A little trick for that is you could put in a 300 or a number 9 cut into this chamber to prevent the top pin and spring from driving into an empty void. However, this one doesn't actually have a driver pin up there, so we do not need to do that on this one. So right here is where they're talking about, and that's, I guess, coming from the background that I have, that's already my go-to because I've already got, this is common out in the field. You got to convert, if your customer has a residential grade Schlage deadbolt on their door, and you need to make everything else that's commercial work with that one 5-pin key, or even more common, a storefront door, a common 1-inch mortar cylinder will only allow for a 5-pin key to work. A 6-pin key goes through too far, and it goes too far and hits the tailpiece on the back side. So one of those tricks that I use for that when I'm doing the 5-pin key on the front mortise lock, then let's say they have a 6-pin commercial lock on the back or a lever, something commercial grade, and I need to keep that on the same 5-pin key, my brain automatically goes to, I will put that 9 depth in there just to keep the security of having 6 full engaged pins, which makes it more secure and it keeps the security as opposed to dumping that top chamber and dumping a pin and dumping a spring. Avis has figured out that most locksmiths or most people that would be servicing this would not figure that out. So it seems like they've taken preventative maintenance or preventative measures to prevent bricking the cylinder by deleting the 6th pin from the beginning and allowing you to add it as an option later. Do I have that accurate, John?
For the most part, yes. I'm curious to know what you did with the 9-pin in that chamber. Did you put a top pin in there as well? And if the padlock is sideways, that pin will fall and block the keyway or block the shear line.
Yeah, that's what I did the first time because I was like, oh, it's chambered 6, so I dumped that 9-pin in there. Well, it pops right out this hole through the top, and I was like, oh, cool. Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore. So yes, that would cause problems in the future if you did that. But as I'm showing here, leave it completely out of the lock, or you have to add this extra little packet that they send. Does that make sense now?
As long as I've got the floor here for a second, let me just remind you also that the Z-bars come in 2 flavors, the old series and the new series. They're not interchangeable. One has a black dot, one has a red dot.
Okay.
I think the current ones are black, but we usually just keep a couple in our pin kit in the chambers that you never use, and they're always there for you if you want to reconvert it back.
What is the difference?
Mark, you might have a better insight on that. I think it's just a configuration. It doesn't sit in there quite the same.
Yeah, they've redesigned the hubs, and the radius on that thing is a little bit different, and the angles and how they make the Z-bar. They will not interchange because our guys were having problems with it. And I said, well, why aren't you putting the one in that was in the box? The other recommendation I would have is for all locksmiths, even if you're not going to load the 6-chamber, is to please slide that little stop in the top of that 6-chamber. You've got extra drivers and springs in your pin kit all day long, but you might not have that little slide to secure that top pin position if you're going to go out to a guy's system and key it onto a 6-pin key instead of a 5.
Right. So you're saying slide that little piece in there while you're rekeying it, even if it's only 5, because the guy that comes behind you might need to chamber it up to 6.
Absolutely.
That's a great suggestion, Mark. Thank you very much for that. These are going to go in my Avis padlock servicing kit so that we have extras of them, but that would be a great tip to actually slide that in there, to think of the guy that's got to come behind you, or even your company coming back in the future and upgrading or rekeying at that point in time. Great suggestions from both of you. Thank you. If you look and see,
What lines up with that 6th hole is right here, and there is no pin and no spring, and that pin will literally just dump out through the hole. So now that I'm fully confident that we have 5 pins at the correct depth in place, I'm going to go ahead and rotate this back up, and it's going to tell me whether I've done a good job or not. If I've done a good job, you will get this. If you didn't do a good job, you'll have binding, crunching, and a bunch of bad things happen. Now, if bad things happen, you can take this clip apart, you can shim the cylinder, and begin to undo whatever you accidentally did. You put a wrong size pin in. Most common one is you probably put a pin that was too low in.
Wayne,
Okay, so
Wayne,
yeah,
that the top where I don't, that slot, is that the one you're talking about? Put that metal piece in with a top spring and
this one right here.
yeah, and then it just stays.
Apparently, yes. There's this little, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's this little piece of brass, and it sounds like Mark has done a bunch of these, and John too. These just slide right into it as like a friction fit.
It's not even a friction fit. It just slides in there. But once you get it into the chamber, there's no place for it to fall out. It fits into the cavity of the lock body.
So
Right.
you put you put your number 6 pin in, and then put the top pin and the spring in, and push it down and slide that in. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly correct.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm not, I do a lot of the Avis locks because I got a lot of commercial properties that use them, and I just kind of forgot that 6 pin was even there, but now I can actually put it back in.
It's only been there
Thank
for
you.
a few years. It hasn't always been there. They've always pinned them to 6 pin without that cap on there. Then they decided to start save a micro ounce of brass by sending with 5 pin blanks instead.
I think, I mean, maybe that's it. I think, John, I think what we were talking about earlier, I think too many people bricked them, trying to convert them like they, you know what I mean? Whoever Farmer Joe gets them, takes them to wherever, and he's got 5 pin keys, and they keyed it up to 5 and didn't do the 6th one, and didn't add the number 9 in, or didn't do any of the other stuff that we talked about, and then rotated it back and locked them up. And then Avis gets a bunch of padlocks sent back saying, hey, these don't work. I think that would be my theory as to why they converted it to this. Because I'm like you, I hadn't even seen this newer system like this. I thought they were always just pinned 6 pin, top and bottom. But this is newer for me too. So now I'm going to take this, the key comes out, and I'm going to explain a little bit about key retaining and non-key retaining. If we look way down in here, there's this little Z bar. Whoa, that is magnetic. Okay, there's this little Z bar. And if we take this little Z bar, oh, the Z bar already fell out. There's a little Z bar right there. This Z bar actually controls the lock, and it turns it from key. So that's the new one then, if it's got the little black dot on it, right? This is all the new system. That's why it was a little confusing as to why they did all that. I was a little perplexed as I was doing this, to be quite honest. So I'm glad that Mark and John are here to help clarify that, because I was a little perplexed by why they didn't just chamber it up 6 pins. Retaining to non-key retaining. Now I'm going to show how it works just like this. I'm going to show you non-key retaining first. And the first trick that I'm going to let you know about is making sure that I'm going to lock and make sure that the key is actually working and turning before I lock the cylinder. This tip will save you so much headache and heartache. Otherwise, you need access to this point to be able to pull the cylinder back out, or you can just dummy fit it like so. If you screw the screw in and lock the lock, and do not make sure 1000% that it actually turns the padlock, you have now bricked the padlock, and you'll have to pick the padlock to get it back open so that you can figure out where the problem is. We don't have that problem right now because the screw is not in place and the key works perfectly well. So always make sure and do a test run before you actually lock the cylinder. Now, I'm going to explain the difference between key retaining and non-key retaining. Key retaining means that the lock will retain the key as long as the padlock is open. When it is in this position, you cannot pull the key out of the cylinder. You can bring it back, but it's not going to line up properly all the way. It's going to go to right about here. Okay. Non-key retaining means that I can leave this locked or unlocked. Okay. So that means if it's unlocked, I can pull the key out. The biggest thing to take away from this is if the Z bar is in the padlock, you have key retaining. If the Z bar is not in the padlock, you have non-key retaining, meaning that the key can come out with the lock in the open position. This is very important. Now, we can also see how our little Z bar just kind of sits on here or fits on here like so. You can also take the Z bar and you can put him back directly into the lock itself and the lock mechanism like so. I'm just going to put him back. Okay. Sure he's in a good spot and side here. A little grease could help him stay where he needs to stay if he's not cooperating. Okay, Z-bar is in place. Get a big zoom in on that. Then I'm going to drop the cylinder in from the top, just like so. Everything fits nice and tight. Now here's that position that I was telling you about. You have one of two choices right here, right now. If you put the screw into the cylinder, okay, if you put the screw in and tighten him down, you normally would, like we're wrapping this up, we're getting ready to be done with this here, okay? And you don't turn the key and verify that the key is actually meeting the shear line, and you lock the padlock, you are now hosed, okay? You have bricked that padlock. You'll have to pick the lock or find out what happened in here. Something, dirt, debris, the Z-bar got jammed, something happened, and now you've got the brick cylinder. That's not what we did here. Everything works good. Now look at this, no matter how hard I try, that Z-bar actually prevents the cylinder from lining up with the Bible and allowing me to remove the key. No matter how hard I try, you cannot pull this key out with the Z-bar in place. This is called key retaining. Also, watch the key as I lock the padlock. Did you see it? It locks back at 12 o'clock, okay? It's only gonna go to about 2 o'clock here without it. Now, when I shut the shackle, I'm not touching the key at all. When I shut and lock the shackle, watch the key. Click. I'm gonna do that one more time. Click. Okay, right here. So that is the ABUS 8350 series, completely disassembled, completely reassembled, key retaining, non-key retaining. And if I had the little tool to change the shackle out, I was going to show you that, but I don't have that tool handy right in front of me. When you have the cylinder out, there's another tool that would go in here. That's the shackle change tool. You rotate it over while you have the plug out. The shackle comes out and almost any shackle goes into place. So you can do a 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch, 5 inch, or 6 inch, I believe. So for more information, check out the website below. Thanks for watching and check out wayneslockshop.com. All righty. So that was good. I'm glad that we got some other information on there as well. John or Mark, do you have any other comments, questions, concerns? We can discuss in a little bit further, you know, why we think that they did that whole 6-pin, 5-pin thing. And then it sounds like somebody needs clarification on brick, basically turning something useful into something not useful. It's pretty common terminology in a car. If you hook up your programmer to a car or you're trying to do something to a vehicle to program a key and you set off the anti-theft devices, you can brick the car or brick the BCM. In the mechanical world, it would be, like I said, if you've ever taken a lock cylinder and you forgot to put a pin in a particular cylinder, and then the top pin drives all the way through and the spring drives the top pin into the bottom chamber and there's no pin there to hold it. Now you have a spring going in between the shear line. So even if you do manage to get it turned over and picked, you can't shim pick it anymore. You can't really pick it because you can't lift that pin up past the plug to get it back into the top of the housing. And now you have a spring in between the housing and the cylinder. If you haven't done this yet,
Shut up.
huh? Who was here? I don't see any other microphones open. But that's how you brick a cylinder. Sometimes you can fix them, sometimes you can't. If you do it in a padlock, it's even worse because you're going to spend more time tangling with that padlock if you brick one, then it's going to be worth sometimes. So go ahead, Mark. I see John, both of you guys have mics open, whoever wants to go.
Yeah, so sometimes we're doing several dozen, and some of our larger jobs, we've done several hundred of these. And when you key them up on the bench into the system, when we apply the Z-bar, we don't take tweezers and put it down inside. We leave the dot facing up and put it at the top of the keyway and set it right on the back of the cylinder when the cylinder's on the bench. And then somebody comes behind me and they grab those cylinders and they slide the padlock body right over the top of the cylinder. You lean it over, hold the cylinder in there, screw it down, test the key, and snap it shut. And
you have an assembly line.
yeah, I mean, and that's the only key to doing big jobs, guys. What makes big jobs profitable is working out an efficiency method to where you can take time away from that job and make things happen. You know, when a lot of you guys work by yourself, and when you've got several hundred padlocks to do, you're spending the entire weekend away from your family on a bench doing that. And we can turn several hundred padlocks with a few people on the bench into a couple of hours. One person pinning, one person disassembling out of the box. And we use long followers when we're doing mortise cylinders and stuff. We'll shoot 20 or 40 cylinders on one follower. You use your clean out follower, you clean it out, you make sure all the pins and springs are good, and then you load that cylinder housing onto a long follower that may be 2 or 3 feet long. So, but yeah, we do some ABUS padlock jobs that are pretty big, and those aren't as common as they used to be. We used to do a bunch of this stuff, and I think the biggest thing that's happening to our industry is that people are buying this stuff online, and it's taking my brick and mortar location and it's starting to change the appearance of it. Although 29 to 33% of our total sales last year were through the shop, there's going to come a day when I'm going to have to make a decision as to whether or not this shop is worth keeping open. You know, we'll sell that piece of property or rent it out to somebody, move the business into a warehouse, but that's for a different conversation. But these padlocks are fantastic. ABUS makes a high quality product, and so does Packlock. And when you guys go to the Aloha convention or anywhere Packlock is, please make sure you take enough time to see those guys. They will sit at the bench and show you their newest product taken apart and reassembled from A to Z. You've got no questions how to service it when you have a factory rep sitting there doing it.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. That's all good advice.
Wayne, taking you back to the subject that Mark went on a rabbit trail with. Every time you make a mistake on a padlock, particularly with the window on the ABUS, you have a tendency of losing master pins, and there's no natural way of checking that. In a mortise cylinder, you just slide your follower out and you look at it and you can find out where it is. But on a padlock, it gets lost in there, and since you haven't taken the padlock apart, you don't know it's there, and it's a good chance of losing those number 2 master pins up into the Bible if you're not careful. So you may wind up taking that cylinder apart more so than you were planning to originally, if you follow that.
Right. If it's been master keyed, and we've had that come into play before. Yeah, master keying those padlocks it's not as fun.
Well,
It's
it
not.
can be, but the point is, if you're keying someone else's lock, you have to check that.
Yeah.
But even if you've done it and you've made a mistake, my 4-pin went into a 5-pin, now it's locked up. I don't know why I did that. And I've taken it apart. When I take it apart, I'm taking it apart with the change key, and the change key left the master pin in the Bible. And
Yeah.
now I'm confused now, and then I have to start from scratch or leave it a Mason key.
Right. Yeah. Yes. All of those things could definitely happen. And it's good to bring that to everybody's attention as well. Good indicator if when I'm rekeying, if you pull something apart and as you're dumping the existing pin stacks out, if you see any master pins in there, real good indicator that you're going to need to go back and make sure you check all those other pins up in the top of the Bible. And on this one, you'd have to disassemble even further and pull that clip out and actually pull the plug and everything out and use a master pin follower to dump all of those out. So excellent point. Thank you. Anything else? Questions, comments, concerns? I didn't do the shackle change on these because I didn't need to, and it requires a special little tool. But they do have a shackle change tool when you have it all torn apart. All you got to do is insert this little tool. It's literally called a ABUS shackle servicing tool or something like that. Goes in, rotates, retracts that ball bearing on the opposite side of the shackle. The shackle comes out, new shackle goes in, you remove the tool, and you continue servicing the lock as you would normally. So quite a lot of moving parts for padlock. To Mark Dawson's point, yeah, people could sure buy padlock online. They could buy it off of Amazon or wherever, but are they going to know all of the little tricks to actually rekey it and to set it up the way they want it? Are they going to know all of the different things about key retaining, non-key retaining? Are they going to know about servicing rules? Are they going to be able to do all of these other things? It goes back to that age-old question, if somebody's looking up how to do it themselves online, the DIYer was never going to be your customer anyways. So I want the people that to say, hey, I need 6 padlocks. We want them keyed up to the same as our office buildings. We want them set up on these keys here, and we want 15 keys for our employees. Okay, done. I take a $35 padlock at my cost. I mark it up. I rekey it. I add my services into it. It's now a $75 padlock, and then I sell that to the customer. Now we've solved their problem, and the manager wasn't ever going to order anything online anyway. He's not price checking what we're doing. That's my customer. The person who's the DIYer, they were never my customer to begin with. They were going to figure a way how to accomplish what they wanted to do without using my services. So,
Mark, you made a good point about asking the reps at the convention to show you, and they will, and I'll bet many of them are willing to give you the sample pieces, such as that shackle removing tool, as I know ABUS has done in the past, free of charge.
Yeah, we have a few of them, and we didn't pay for any of them.
yeah, definitely. You get free swag too, because they want you to be familiar with their product so that when your customer says, I need 100 padlocks keyed to this Sargent or Schlage or whatever keyway, they'll get them through you, or you'll get them through them.
You can make that shackle tool out of a cylinder, but you've got to grab that little brass pin that limits the rotation of the cylinder, and you have to pull that out. And you won't find but maybe 1 out of 20 padlock cylinders that have that thing pressed in there soft enough to do that. It's hard to grab a hold of that little brass pin and then yank that out of there. But if that pin is not there, you can then tag that cylinder or spray paint it and leave it in your kit as a tool, because now you have a blank key that operates it and it'll rotate farther. And now that works exactly like that shackle change tool, to where you can change those shackles out. in a pinch in the field, if that's all you got is a vise and you smack it with a hammer, knock the cylinder off, I mean, you can solve that problem and keep going. But I digress as a smith.
Yeah.
You know what, Mark, you got an excellent point there, and maybe Wayne can show that in real life for a 10-minute stint on one of these Mondays.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. We'll put that in the wheelhouse for things to do. So lots of stuff being learned today, even myself learning exactly what this little packet was. And had I seen this fall out of the box, I probably would have addressed it a little bit more, but quite literally, I never even got a chance to see this little guy.
There should be some instructions in the box as well.
There was nothing in the box. There was a padlock, a key, and this fell out.
Okay, there's a little less than a business card size piece of paper that's folded up in there and telling you what to do with it.
Not on mine, unfortunately. I don't know if they started not including those now or what, but these are all the fresh boxes and I got nothing.
So I guess we're now going to have a conversation about all the product we buy from distributors that some other smith, or I'll use that term loosely, purchase first and then return because they didn't know what they were doing. And now half the stuff's missing from it. Don't get me started.
Well, then, Mark, let me ask you a question. If I can go out of line here, I had somebody ask me about making a key, and it was they went to the box store and bought it. It had an Everest D123 in it. It's with a serial number on it. Someone had taken the lock, put their cylinder in it, restricted, and returned it because apparently it didn't work for what they wanted, and they forgot to take their own cylinder out.
Some other locksmith you could probably track down who has that restricted keyway in your area.
Well, it's not in my area, but I can do that. It has that 6-digit number on it.
Yeah, exactly. You find out who did it. Oops. Yeah, and it is a mystery. I personally, I don't think they would go through that much trouble to save the brass. In fact, I think it actually took extra tooling to be able to create this little 6-pin addition. To me, I think they did it for the ease of use out in the field. And like I said, they got tired of, well, this is how it works. 5-pin key, it goes in the hole. Why? And why do I need to put a pin in there? And then click, brick. This thing is a piece of crap. I'm going to send it back to the distributor because I did not become familiar with how this system works. Therefore, it has to be somebody else's fault. This is, unfortunately, the way that most people think.
And behind the scenes, Wayne, you just mentioned it. Features and quality are what make us buy more expensive products.
Mm-hmm.
People come in my shop every week saying, why is this safe $1,700 and the one that's the same size at the box store down the street is $595? And I have to tell them about features and quality.
Exactly. I do that. My spiel is there's going to be a McDonald's and a steakhouse in every city. I'm going to be the steakhouse. You can get a meal anywhere, but what do you get at that McDonald's place? What do you get? Crap food, processed. It's going to kill you. It's poisoning you. And that's what you're going to get there. Or you can get a more quality meal through the steakhouse, obviously. And yes, it is more expensive, but think about what a big box warehouse does. They have price points and they have products that meet price points. I have products that have price points meet them. So it's a much more quality thing. Home Depot, Amazon, all these places, they make money by selling millions of products, hundreds of thousands, volume, massive volume. That is not what we do. They want to make a couple pennies or fractions of a penny on millions of sales. We are making, a couple $100 on a few sales. That's kind of the way that we look at it. So I'm going to pay a lot more attention to detail. You're buying service and customer service when you invest in me, and we'll show you all the little tricks that you're just not going to get at Home Depot. I mean, I'm sorry, Amazon, wherever you get it, you're not going to get the same service and quality and get the end result that you're after. I solve problems, even though it can be a retail-based type of thing where we are selling some products. I still sell results and I sell solutions, and that's what sells. Anybody can buy any product anywhere. So, all righty. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Product of origin. Quality you're talking about. There are some Chinese products that are reasonable. Obviously your loyalty will determine where you buy it from, but there are some cautions that go along with them. And Abus now used to be a German lock, and I don't think they make anything in Germany anymore, do they?
I have no idea where they make it.
I think it's on China.
Made in China.
Yeah, but Mark mentioned that Paclock is as an alternative too. And
they're
Paclock,
an American-based brand. Yes.
Well, they're American assembled based on global parts. I think they say it. So they try to keep as much quality where the quality is important. Sometimes quality is not important in certain parts of it, but so the alternative is still there as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Paclock is a great product as well. Those are really the only two that I'll go to. I will, if they need specific things, I'll go to Abus for that. And then if we need other things, we'll go to Paclock. Paclock is really cool because they have their own restricted keyway systems, and they'll do all the work for you. You can just call them up and say, hey, I need 27 padlocks with 30 keys, all keyed alike. You can have them master keyed. You can have anything you want done, and they will set that up at the factory for you and then send it out to you. So you're delivering. This is actually a great way to delegate. You're now, instead of, like Mark was saying earlier, I'm on the bench all weekend pinning up locks. Heck, put them on the bench and enjoy the time with your family and just sell it as a prepackaged deal. That is
is that
Paclock gives other cylinders too. I mean, the same cylinders fit multiple products.
Yeah.
So I just have an extra set ready to swap them in there.
It's interchangeable. Very interchangeable.
How do you spell Paclock?
PAC. Let's see.
LOCK.
Yeah, but I think they spell it.
PAC LOCK.
I think they spell.
I'm trying to Google it right now.
PAC LOC.
It stands for the Pacific Lock Corporation.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Well, they changed their abbreviation. Their Pac Blue is PAC BLU. So I was just making sure that it actually had the CK in it. But yes. Yeah, Paclock is really good. And the owner over there is very approachable and listens to a lot of feedback too. Paclock's probably the best padlock company as far as customer service and innovative products and making it, I can't think of the word that I'm trying to use to describe it, but it's like Legos. Like, it's one part fits another part. The cylinders are all interchangeable, kind of like Allegiant and Schlage do with their products. Like, when you're on the AD series works with other AD series, right? The handles, all that stuff is all interchangeable. It all works together with that series of products. Paclock does the same thing. So
I think for any of you guys who need chain as well, Abus makes chain that is unmatched in the industry. It's square in shape, so when you put it in jaws of a bolt cutter, it doesn't fit. And the boron alloy, the alloy material itself, is a material that hardens as it's compressed. So the more you squeeze it, the harder it gets. I don't know how they do that, but that's metallurgy 101, and I don't know anything about it. So, but we use a lot of their chain. And when I've got custom jobs where I need 17 feet or 13 feet or 29 feet, I call the factory direct in Phoenix, and they will cut and sleeve that chain for you. And I've got a guy who has 27 custom classic and vintage motorcycles in a warehouse, and he can unlock any corner of the chain in his area and pull that chain through the wheels of those bikes and get any one bike out by only unlocking one connection. And he was really thrilled to have that done. He bought about $950 worth of chain, all custom sleeved, and he just wanted chain. And I said, no, you need to get that stuff sleeved. I mean, it's going to be laying through the wheels of all your motorcycles.
yeah,
Their chain is fantastic.
it is. It is. I've done a tremendous amount of research on cutting chains and the bolt cutter proofness of the chains. As a matter of fact, I actually bought the largest set of bolt cutters that you can physically buy, which is like 62 inches. It's something crazy. The jaws on them are like this. And then on top of that, I hooked up a ratchet strap and welded a ratchet to them so that I didn't have to bounce on them, so that I could maintain constant pressure. I would just disagree with one thing that you had said, Mark. I don't think that the steel actually gets harder as it's compressed. The steel in the chain is actually harder than the steel in the bolt cutters. And so when you go to cut them, the steel actually bends and destroys the edge of the bolt cutters. And I've actually had the jaws of my bolt cutters break when trying to cut security chain. This was also apparent with hydraulic bolt cutters as well. It literally destroys when one metal is harder than the other, the softer metal is the one that fails. So, if the chain metal is harder, then it's going to make the tool steel. It's like D2 tool steel on bolt cutters. Rockwell hardness scale of around 40, I think 42 is pretty common. The Rockwell hardness scale in the chain is like 60, which is the way that stacks on top of it to get that Rockwell hardness scale it's hard to even fathom how much of a difference that is. 40 to 20 on the Rockwell hardness scale. It compounds each time. So as you go to cut it, it's trying to say nope, and it literally destroys the bolt cutters.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mark.
Yeah, you gentlemen who are trying to sell a chain and padlock to a gate customer when they've got $1 million worth of construction equipment behind that gate, with fiber blade type apparatus and a Milwaukee grinder with a fiber blade, you're going to cut through any chain, even the best of chain. So we do everything in layers. You sell them 3 pieces of chain and 3 padlocks, one high, one in the middle, one low. And it makes a big difference because most perks don't come with extra blades, extra time, or extra batteries. They've got that one tool in their hand to try to defeat that product. And that's what makes the difference between a successful entry and that customer being absolutely impressed with the security solution that you provided.
Absolutely. And even one step above that, actually, I think I will make it next week's next week's meeting. There is an angle grinder resistant U-lock on the market now. Have you seen this, or are you aware of it? Has anybody seen this? The gentleman from Lightlock, Neil, I can't remember his last name. There's a material called borinium, and it is actually impregnated on the outside of the steel for the new U-lock angle grinder proof U-lock. And as you go and try and cut this is the latest in technology as far as angle grinding or angle cutter defeat technology. It literally destroys the blade of the angle grinder as you're trying to cut through it. And it's so hard that it's actually smoked an angle grinder while trying to cut through that U-lock. So we are still rapidly advancing, and there are new materials coming out there. And I highly suggest you take a look at this Lightlock U-lock. It would work for gates as well. I don't know about distributorship or anything like that, but I'm sure if you wanted to distribute the product, you possibly could. But it uses an ABUS disc retainer lock, so you're not going to be picking that little puppy. It's got hardened stuff all the way around it, and the cylinder is very deep in. Extremely, I got it right here. Extremely difficult to cut. Okay, so then we've got our disc retainer lock here. But this stuff you can actually see when you peel the layers back. I have lots of video of me trying to cut this lock with an angle grinder, and I was able to cut through it, but it took a diamond blade and thinking outside the box to be able to do it. This was so impactful that the owner of Lightlock actually flew from the UK over here to meet with me and do product testing on his lock.
and he didn't think we'd actually be able to get through it, and he was a little disappointed when we did. But it is very difficult. It would take multiple blades, multiple batteries, and as Mark said, criminals want to smash and grab. They want to zip and go. This will not allow that to happen. So cool.
I'm curious how he was disappointed. I mean, anything, even bank vaults, given time and effort, can be defeated.
I told him
Everything can be defeated. And that's why we have such a cool trade that we're in, because with enough patience, enough time, and enough tools in our arsenal, and especially the knowledge in our noggins, we can defeat these products we look at every day. A couple of weeks ago, I cut off a multi-lock padlock. It was a slide bolt padlock, and I surgically removed that thing from an explosives magazine. And they made me tape up all the cracks and everything. It was fun. I was sweating like a pig when I was done, but it was fun.
Oh boy, that sounds good. Well, bring that story next week, and we will discuss the light lock next week, and we'll see if that meets or exceeds anybody's security needs. I can tell you, even though I was able to defeat it, I was so thoroughly impressed. It literally feels like it's trying to suck the blade out of your hand. And my grinder got so hot, I had to let it stop and cool off for a little bit to make another cut. Otherwise, I would have literally burned up even my high-grade Milwaukee tools trying to get through that. So that's the subject for next week. I will put it in my notes. Great conversation today on security and 6-pin versus 5-pin and all the little changes that they're making. Like I said, it would have been nice if they'd have given a little piece of paper, but I still have the trash from rekeying all that. There was no instructions, and this was tucked down in some of the boxes and fell out of one. So, all righty. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate all the input. Mark, you're always awesome to have here. John, thank you so much for your insight as well. Jim, thank you for contributing as well with the release tool and the shackle change tool. We'll see you guys next week. I don't have all the answers, but at least we bring it up for discussion. And at the end of the day today, you have more knowledge than when you started. Thanks for watching.